Good morning. Welcome to the FCA Sunday breakfast tea session. FCA is also the Bangalore chapter of IACTA. So I welcome you to this meeting. Feel free to ask questions or comments. You may either type it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself at the end of the talk. Dr. Dheeraj Jaroja is present with us. Dr. Nagaraj will be moderating the session. I'll be with you all through. Now can I invite Dr. Nagaraja, who is a professor in cardiac anesthesia and Jayadeva Institute of Cardiology, Bangalore, to take over and do the proceedings. Dr. Nagaraja, please.
Thank you, Murli sir. And it's a great pleasure in inviting Dr. Dheeraj Arora, who is a principal consultant in Medanta Medicity Hospital. And he needs no introduction. He has got various publications. He's academically very active. And let me not waste much time in inviting Dr. Dheeraj Arora to present about the assessment of thoracic aorta and how important is it in acute aortic syndrome. So over to you, sir.
Thanks, Dr. Nagaraja, and thanks, Dr. Muralidhar, sir, for inviting me for this morning session. And it's a regular affair and a very good academic program. Now I proceed with my presentation. It's on the assessment of thoracic aorta. Basically, it's a T-based. How important in acute aortic syndrome? Although I will cover the acute aortic syndrome, but I will also cover some aneurysm and other aortic pathologies. Now, if you see the background, like in our hospital, we are doing a lot of aortic surgeries. Like from in 11 years, we have done approximately 1400 surgeries. We are doing around 200 surgeries per year. We have a very good dynamic team of aortic surgeons. Now, if you see the
please mute everybody. Please mute.
All the participants, excepting the speaker and moderator, please mute your microphones. All the participants, please mute your microphones, excepting that of Dr. Dheeraj Arora and Nagaraja. If you want to speak, you speak after the lecture and for questioning or commenting the content of the talk, today's talk. Okay, thank you.
Dheeraj sir, please continue, sir. Sorry for the
Dheeraj, your mic is muted. The mute message is not for you, it is for others.
Yeah. Now it's audible. Am
yes,
I
sir.
audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
The general outline of my talk. First, I will cover the anatomy of aorta, followed by the imaging. What are the basic principles and the basic T views for imaging of aorta? Then a word about the epi-aortic scanning. Then covering the aortic pathologies. Particularly, I will cover the acute aortic syndrome as well as other pathologies, and followed by conclusion. Now, if you see the anatomy, there are various parts of aorta. One is the ascending aortic root. Then there is a sinotubular junction, followed by the ascending aorta. Then there is the aortic arch, which gives rise to all the head and neck vessels. Then isthmus and the descending aorta, followed by the abdominal aorta. Now, if you see the aortic root, it is basically comprises of aortic valve annulus, cusp of the aortic valve, and the sinus is sinus of Valsalva. And ascending aorta is the tubular portion of the aorta, beginning at the junction of the sinotubular junction and extending up to the origin of the brachiocephalic artery. And aortic arch, as you know, it begins at the origin of the brachiocephalic artery and gives rise to the origin of head and neck vessels. Now, if you see the descending aorta is anterior. If you see the anatomy, like anatomical relationship, that is very important for T views. It is anterior to esophagus in the upper region. In the mid region, it is lateral to esophagus in the mid thorax, and it is posterior to esophagus at the diaphragmatic hiatus. And if you see the aortic wall as such, there are three layers are there: outer adventitia, middle media, and interintima. And whenever there is a dissection or atheroma is there, it alters the aortic valve anatomy. That is very important. And if we see the anatomical relationship, that is also important for T views, like the aortic root and the proximal ascending aorta lies within the pericardium. And that is why it is easily imaged on the transesophageal echo. And the important relationship is also with the right pulmonary artery as it courses between the esophagus and the ascending aorta. It provides an acoustic window and anatomical reference for ascending aorta. And there is a blind spot is there. That is also important for TE, like the distal, where the distal trachea and the left main bronchus crosses. It, like in this region of the aorta, is usually not visualized by the transesophageal echo. It is a blind spot with transesophageal echo. So what are the, like, we are not using this device, but there is a device is available, which is the AView device, which we can use to obliterate this blind spot. It can be like introduced into that trachea by the endotracheal tube. We can put a saline and place into the left main bronchus to optimize the imaging, and to, like with the T also, we can have the view of this blind spot. Now, what are the, like coming to the imaging, what are the basic principles in the T views? Like it is based on various guidelines. Like one guideline came in 2013 on the comprehensive transesophageal echo examination. Then there is a European guideline on aortic disease, came in 2010. Then in 2015, there is a multi-modality imaging of disease of thoracic aorta guidelines came from ASC as well as from European Association of Cardiovascular Imaging. Then we have also some publications on the aorta. Now, why it is important, the imaging of aorta by T, why it is important? Because there is a proximity of the esophagus and the thoracic aorta. It permits the high resolution image of the aorta. Then second thing, in the case of acute aortic syndromes, we can do emergency evaluation in clinically unstable patient. We can put a T probe and we can easily image the aorta. Then detect the complication of aortic disease such as pericardial tamponade, aortic regurgitation, myocardial ischemia, and we can also guide surgical decision making, like we can do any aortic intervention is to be done or any other thing is to be done. We can also detect that. So that is the importance of transesophageal echo, particularly in aortic disease. If we see the normal dimensions of aorta, it is like widest at the sinuses, like it is around 29 to 45 millimeters in an average adult. Aortic annulus is around 20 to 30. Then it gradually tapers down, and it is at aortic arch, it is around 22 to 36, and gradually it is 20 to 30 millimeters in the descending aorta. So gradually it tapers down, and like I have already said, it is greatest in the sinus segment and gradually tapers down the sinotubular junction. And what is important is that aortic diameter should be measured perpendicular to the axis of blood flow. That is a class 1 recommendation published in 2010. Then aortic diameter should be measured from internal, like intima to intima. That is again a class 1 recommendation with level of evidence C. So this is again published in 2010. So these are the important things we should remember, that the aortic diameter should be performed perpendicular to the axis of blood flow, and the aortic diameter should be measured from intima to intima. Now, what are the various T views which are available for aortic aorta? There are basically 9 views are there in the standard view. As we see, this is a mid-esophageal view, aortic short axis and long axis view, mid-esophageal ascending aortic long and short axis view, then descending aortic long and short axis view, then upper esophageal aortic arch long and short axis view, and one is the deep transgastric 5-chamber view, as you already know. Now I will cover one by one. This is the mid-esophageal short axis view. Everybody knows that we can examine the aortic root, we can examine the aortic curves, we can also evaluate the aortic valve area, we can also have put a color Doppler to have the aortic regurgitation, and we can also sometimes see the origin of the right and left coronary arteries. Now this is the typical view. This is the aortic valve, the aortic root we can see, and we can have the cusp. We can see the any coronary arteries like with or obstruction, any calcification of the aortic valve. We can also detect on this view. Second is the mid-esophageal long axis aortic valve view. This is a very important view to check the aortic root. We can check the aortic annulus. We can check the sinotubular junction diameter. We can also have the ascending aortic dimensions. So this is a very important views, particularly with regard to aorta examination. We can have the aortic valve cusp mobility, calcification, aortic regurgitation. Again, we can detect along with the aortic root diameters. So this way we can have the aortic diameters. But the important thing is that the aortic diameters are measured in diastole, while the aortic root, like the aortic valve annulus, is usually measured in the mid-systole. Another view is the mid-esophageal ascending aortic long axis view. We can have the diameter of the ascending aorta. We can examine any atheroma, any calcification, any dissection. There is a very important view to see any dissection flap or any calcification or any atheroma in the aorta. Now this is a view. This is the right pulmonary artery. You can see, and easily you can make out any calcification, any dissection flap can be easily visible on the transesophageal echo. Again, this is a short axis view, mid-esophageal ascending aortic short axis view. Again, the same things we can examine the aortic diameter. the atherosclerosis, the degree of atherosclerosis, any aneurysm, any dissection flap is there or not, we can easily visualize. You can see the position of the probe in the mid-esophageal position. And this is the mid-esophageal ascending aortic short axis view, already told you. This is the aorta, and this is the SVC, and this is the pulmonary artery. Then coming to another view, this is the descending aortic thoracic short axis view at the 0 degree. We can see this is a short axis view. Again, the same things. The important thing, another thing is that we can detect the pleural effusion, which is an important thing. Whenever there is acute aortic syndrome is there, there's a lot of pleural effusion, hemopericardium may be there. So we can also detect, apart from aortic diameter, atherosclerosis, aneurysm, dissection, we can have the degree of pulmonary effusion or pleural effusion as well. This you can see, this is the aorta. This is the descending aortic short axis view. And we can check the position of the intra-aortic balloon pump. You can see the tip of the IABP in the descending aorta, which we can exactly check where it should be located, just distal to the left subclavian artery. This is again another view. We can see the position of the IABP tip. Is a long axis view. The same, you can see the position of, we can see the tip of the IABP, as well as we can see the dissection flap. We can see any atheroma is there or any atherosclerosis, any mobile atheroma is there or not. Then comes the long axis view. Again, the same things I already told you. These are the things we can see. Then coming to the upper esophageal, you can see the position of the tip of the probe here is in the upper esophageal position. We can check the aortic arch long axis view, although it is not routinely used. Basically, those views are commonly used, but this is upper esophageal aortic arch. We can check the origin of the brachiocephalic vessels. Apart from other things like atherosclerosis, aneurysm, dissection, we can have the origin of the brachiocephalic vessels as well at 0 degrees. This is the long axis view. Now coming to the upper esophageal aortic arch short axis view. Apart from that, we can see the pulmonary artery in this view. We can increase the angle to about 60-70 degrees, and we can have the aorta as well as the innominate vein is also visible in this view, along with the pulmonary artery. And we can see any dissection flap, aneurysm, all the things of aorta we can be. Along with that, we can see any pulmonary artery pathology or any other problem is there or not. Now this is the innominate vein, this is the aorta, this is the pulmonary artery. Now another important view which is routinely used in our operating rooms is the deep transgastric 5-chamber view. And this is the view we can use it for aortic valve gradients, we can use for LVOT measurements, we can see any, again, aortic valve pathologies as well as the pathology in the aorta we can see. And this is a view, you can see this is the aortic valve, this is the aorta, this is the deep transgastric view. This is a very important view to check the gradients across the aortic valve. Now these are the views we can use, routinely use for like assessment of the aorta. Coming to a word about the epi-aortic scanning, and this is a very important tool which is used in the operating rooms, like to check the blind spot or to check any calcification or to check any, if the surgeons find any, like on palpation, any pathology, he can detect any of the aorta is not good or it is hard and he's suspecting some like atherosclerosis, we can put a epi-aortic scan probe on the aorta and we can have a very good visualization of the pathology or particularly atherosclerosis. So basically aortic root, ascending aorta and aortic arch can be imaged directly. We can have a more than 7 MHz ultrasound transducer in a sterile sheath and it is placed against the anterior aortic wall and we can have assessment of the ascending aortic aneurysm or atheroma or calcification prior to manipulation and instrumentation of the aorta. And the guidelines for epi-aortic scanning came way back in 2007. We are still following those guidelines. And if you see, according to that guideline, those guidelines, there are basically 3 views: short axis view of the ascending aorta, long axis view of the ascending aorta, and long axis view of the arch. And this is a view you can see. You can see this is the mid ascending aorta, this is the right lateral, left lateral, anterior wall, and the posterior wall. And if you see the long axis view, we can see the ascending aorta. It can be divided into 3 portions. One is the proximal, mid, and the distal portion, and this is the right pulmonary artery. So in this way, we can have the direct visualization of the aorta, and we can also check the blind spot in this case with epi-aortic scanning. Now, coming to aortic pathologies, I will basically cover the acute aortic syndrome, and we should know what is the acute aortic syndrome. Basically, it is basically described as a collection of the life-threatening acute injuries to aorta. And there are various types of acute aortic syndrome, like what are the various types of, like, which comprises of acute aortic syndrome is primarily it is aortic dissection. Second, there is the intramural hematoma. Third is there is a penetrating atherosclerotic ulcer. And fourth, there is a traumatic transection of the aorta. So these are the four important pathologies which describes the acute aortic syndrome. And why it is important? The important is it may cause the death of the patient by aortic rupture and complications. And the mortality is particularly very significant in case of acute aortic dissection. Whenever the case of aortic dissection comes, it warrants an emergency cardiac surgery, emergency repair of that thing. And why it is important? Because whenever the type A aortic dissection is there, I will describe what is type A. The mortality is 1 to 2% per hour for first 48 hours. If you wait for that patient, the mortality increases by 1 to 2% per hour. So we have to be very cautious in these type of patients, particularly in the case of type A aortic dissections. So what is acute aortic dissection? It is a primary tear of the aortic intima with blood from the aortic lumen penetrates into the disease media and leading to dissection and creation of the true and a false lumen. So basically there is a creation of the false lumen is there, the true lumen is there, and there is a creation of, because of the rupture of the vasa vasorum, and there is a creation of the false lumen is there. And you can see there are two lumens, one is the true lumen and this is a false lumen. So acute aortic dissection is the most common aortic catastrophe. I already told you incidence is around 5 to 30 per 1 million population per year, and there is a nearly 10,000 cases occurs in USA. The problem with acute aortic dissection is there, it may mimic coronary ischemia, it may mimic pleurisy, it may mimic heart failure, it may mimic stroke, or it may mimic acute abdominal illness. So whenever the patient comes with severe excruciating pain, if we are ruling out any coronary ischemia, then it should be like, it may be acute aortic dissection. So we should be very cautious in that. And why it is important? It is rapidly fatal, and the various diagnostic modalities like echocardiography, CT, and MRI are available to diagnose this pathology. Now, whenever there is a dissection occurs, there is a pulsatile flow of blood into the ascending aortic valve, and there is extension is there. As I already told you, the dissection flap is either localized or it may spiral the entire length of the aorta, and there is a distension of the false lumen, and there is a compression of the true lumen, and ultimately lead to malperfusion syndrome. So that is why it is important. The more the time the dissection passes, the more time passes, there is more chances of malperfusion syndrome is there in these patients. Now, how will you classify? Basically, there are two classifications. One is the DeBakey classification and one is the Stanford classification. DeBakey is type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1 begins in the ascending aorta and extends to at least aortic arch and beyond. Type 2 involves only the ascending aorta, and type 3 it doesn't involve the ascending aorta, it begins in the ascending aorta and most commonly distal to the left subclavian artery. So that is the main difference. While Stanford is a simplified classification, type A and type B. Type A involves the ascending aorta and type B does not involve the ascending aorta. Basically, in common term, the Stanford classification is used, either it is type A and type B. And why? And another is according to the duration of the aortic dissection. It may be acute aortic dissection, it may be chronic aortic dissection. Acute is within 2 weeks of the symptoms onset, and chronic is more than 2 weeks after symptoms begin. So why it is important, particularly DeBakey's type 1 and type 2 or Stanford type A is critical. Why it is critical? Because it is involving the ascending aorta and it warrants emergency cardiac surgery, and there are more chances of extension of the false lumen is there and ultimately leading to malperfusion syndrome, as well as it may involve the arch vessels and may lead to neurological problems as well. Now, what is the role of transesophageal echo, particularly in case of aortic dissection? As I already told you that it is a rapid and safe. It can be performed bedside. We can put a probe in an unstable patient and we can diagnose. Then, particularly in hemodynamically unstable patients, we can avoid the need to transfer to patient to some other. We can it when done bedside. T can be performed in the operating room, like directly we can shift the patient. If the time is not there, then we can also do the surgery, like diagnostic and pre-surgical information we can achieve. And the various studies have shown that sensitivity is around 94 to 100%, and sensitivity is around 77 to 100%. Now these are the various, like you can see the various flap live views, and we can see the flap is there, and this is a dissection flap. You can also see it's involving the arch vessels. You can put a color flow Doppler. Again, this is you can see the dissection flap in the aorta. Now, how we can differentiate between the true lumen and the false lumen? The true lumen, if you see the first by the size, the true lumen is really smaller than the false lumen, and the false lumen is usually most often it is true lumen is smaller and the false lumen is slightly bigger than the true lumen. Then another is the pulsation. Because there is a true lumen, there is a systolic expansion is there. So there is a systolic expansion, there is a systolic flow is there. So another modality is by pulsation. We can do there is a systolic pulsation is there in the true lumen, while there is a systolic compression is there in the false lumen. There is a systolic antegrade flow is there in the true lumen, and while it is absent in the case of false lumen. And another important thing is the communication flow. The communication flow is always there from the true lumen to the false lumen in systole. And the contrast flow is also early and fast in true lumen, while it is delayed and slow in false lumen. So an important parameter is the size. The true lumen is always smaller than the false lumen. Second is the pulsation. The systolic expansion is there in the true lumen, while compression is there in the false lumen. And another is the communication and the flow direction. There is a systolic antegrade flow is there in the true lumen, while it is absent or reduced in the case of false lumen. Like you can see, this is a you can see there is a dissection flap is there in the aorta. Now, by the size, we can see this is a true lumen. It is slightly smaller and this is bigger. This is a false lumen. And if we put a color flow Doppler in the same, you can see the flow direction. It is there from the true lumen to the false lumen. So it is first is by the size and second by the color flow Doppler. We can see that it is a true lumen and that is the false lumen. This is another thing you can see. Because the bigger size, it should be a false lumen, that is the true lumen, the smaller size. In this long axis view, you can see the dissection flap. So this type of patients we can usually encounter, and they come in emergency, immediately shifted to the operating room, and it was done in the operating room. The transesophageal echo, you can detect the flap in the ascending aorta. Another patient, you can see the flap, different type of flaps are there, like the aortic rupture and the dissection flaps. You can see, we can put a color flow Doppler. Now 3D is important, we can delineate the flap at aortic dissection flap in these patients with the help of 3D echo also. Now another pathology which which is a part of acute aortic syndrome is the intramural hematoma. In intramural hematoma, there is no dissection flap, there is no anterior or there is no false lumen. Here only there is a thickened aorta is there in the transverse section. It may be crescentric in shape with distortion of the circular contour. So there is a basically formation of hematoma in the aortic wall, and the thickness of more than 1 centimeter is significant. And like there is no flap, and there is no, you will not find any flap or false lumen in these patients. Now you can see this is a aorta, this ending aorta. You can see there is a intramural hematoma is there around 1 centimeter. So any pathology more than 1 centimeter is significant. Another patient we encountered that you can see this is aorta, and you can see the degree of intramural hematoma. It is almost filling full of the aorta, and the patient was very sick and he was operated upon. So these type of patients usually come with acute aortic syndromes. Another pathology comprises of acute aortic syndrome is the penetrating atherosclerotic ulcer, and it is a focal lesion. It appears as an outpouching of the aortic wall with jagged edges. So this is basically a penetrating aortic ulcers, and it is usually seen in the descending aorta and abdominal aorta. You can see this is a penetrating atherosclerotic ulcer, usually seen in long-standing atherosclerosis. You can see this is the aorta, and you can see there is a mobile atheroma is also there along with the ulcer in the aortic wall. Now, another thing which is very important, particularly with regard to aortic dissections, what is the role of transesophageal echo? We can detect the complications arising out of aortic dissections. Like there are various complications associated with the aortic dissection, like hemopericardium. There may be acute severe AR along with aortic dissection. There may be involvement of coronaries that lead to coronary malperfusion. There may be aortic branch arch vessels involvement that may lead to neurological symptoms, sometimes stroke. There may be cardiac tamponade because of hemopericardium, or there may be pleural effusion may be there. So these are the things we can also immediately diagnose with transesophageal echo. You can see hemopericardium. This patient came with the aortic dissection, and you can see the collection is there. There is a circumferential pericardial effusion is there. It may cause chamber collapse compression, and there may be diastolic chamber collapse may be there in these patients. Another thing, there is associated aortic regurgitation. There are various regions of aortic regurgitation, particularly in patients with aortic dissections. There may be dilatation of the aortic root. There may be dissection of the aortic root itself. There may be mal suspension of the aortic valve cusps, or there may be prolapse of this intimal flap through the aortic valve. So these are the basically regions for aortic regurgitation along with aortic dissection. Particularly the main region is the dilatation, or there may be prolapse of the intimal flap through the aortic valve. And these are the basic regions for AR. Another important, if the coronary involvement is there, particularly the right coronary is most commonly involved, and there is a coronary artery malperfusion may be there. So there may be right ventricular dysfunction may be there may be left ventricular inferior wall hypokinesia may be there. So these are the things that are associated with patients with aortic dissections. Another is the pleural effusion. There is, along with hemopericardium, you will see sometimes pleural effusion is also there. You can see this is aorta, and you can see the degree of pleural effusion in these patients. Another is the arch vessel involvement. If the carotid, we can put carotid duplex scanning also. We can also see the dissection flap involving the carotid vessels as well. Another pathology is the traumatic aortic injury that may be seen in thoracic injuries. There may be intimal tear, there may be intimal flap, or there may be pseudoaneurysm or aortic rupture that may lead to that. So particularly it is seen in road traffic accident, or when there is sudden injury to the chest, it may lead to traumatic aortic injuries. Another component of acute aortic syndrome is the iatrogenic aortic injury. It may be seen in the cath labs or during the cardiac surgery. The incidence is quite low. It is a 0.06% for aortic dissections as a complication of cardiac surgery. So this may be seen when we have one of the patients who had this acute aortic dissection on table while performing the proximal anastomosis of the during CABG. So if we see this flow diagram, whenever we are suspecting aortic dissections, we should immediately do TTE in these patients. And whenever there is no high risk feature is there, there's like we can do TE, or we can do CT, or we can do MRI in these patients, depend on the availability, expertise. And if we are detecting type A aortic dissection or intramural hematoma, you should be immediately shifted to the cardiac OR. So this is for stable patients, while the patients who are unstable, who are high risk patients like with pericardial effusion or having regional wall motion, and I already told you that the complications of a suspected aortic dissection are there, dilated aortic root is there, or severe ARs is there, or the dissection is not confirmed, we can immediately, and the patient is unstable, we can immediately shift the patient to cardiothoracic unit, and we can either do TE and immediately shift to the OR. But in our hospital, we are doing CT angio for all the patients of suspected aortic dissections, that we can delineate the exact location of the intimal flap and the extension of the aortic dissection. So particularly in our hospital, we are doing CT in all the patients before taking the patient to operating room. But theoretically, yes, we can, if the patient is quite unstable, we can immediately do the TE and we can shift the patient. And if we are detecting any complication and we are detecting that hemodynamic instability is there, if the time doesn't permit, we should immediately shift the patient to the operating room. Another pathologies of aorta, which I will cover in just brief, it is defined as the aortic aneurysm. It is defined as the permanent focal dilatation with at least 50% greater than the normal diameter of the aortic segment. It may be true or pseudo, or it may be by according to the shape. It may be fusiform or it may be secular. So how we can diagnose aortic aneurysm, like what are the various modalities, like we have TEE, TTE, echo as well as CT, but CT is commonly used because it can measure the diameter from adventitia to adventitia, and while TE measures the diameter from intima to intima, so it underestimates the aortic diameter as compared to CT. So, but it is another important screening modality for exact delineation of the aortic aneurysm. Now you can see this is a long axis view. You can see the aorta is dilated, is the aortic aneurysm. So local dilatation is there, and there is along with that there is a severe AR is there. There is a dilatation of the aortic root is there. Apart from that dilatation of the aortic root and aorta, the aneurysm may cause the compression effect. It may compress the right pulmonary artery, and there is a compression symptoms of right pulmonary artery is also there along with the aortic aneurysm. Another pathology is the aortic root abscess. We usually see in the case of post-operative patients or otherwise, you can see aortic root abscess is there. Now coming to aortic atheroma, is the irregular thickening along the intimal surface of the aorta. What is basically aortic atheroma is the irregular thickening along the intimal surface of aorta, and the severity depends on the plaque thickness and whether it is mobile or immobile or it is fixed. And the important clinical thing in this case is that is the important risk factor for the perioperative stroke. That is why we should always grade the aortic atheroma accordingly, and we should take appropriate precautions for that. Now, how we can grade and detect the aortic atheroma? We can do echocardiography. We can do transesophageal echo is an important modality. We can detect and grade the severity. We can define the size as well as location of the atheroma. And the important thing is that increase the density of atherosclerotic plaque, and it will be more brighter on the ultrasound image. More brighter image, that means more density of atherosclerotic plaque is there. Now, why there is a classification by Katz-Ethel came way back in 1992, and along with the they have graded the aortic atheroma. It may be normal, grade 1. The percentage incidence of stroke was 0% according to them, and whenever there is a mobile atheroma, that is grade 5, the incidence of stroke was around 46%. So that is why we should always look for any aortic atheroma is there or not, but is the important cause of postoperative stroke in these patients. Our group have also done a lot of work on aortic atheromas. Like it was done in 1995 to 2000. We have studied around 24,000 patients, and routine TE was done in 18,000 patients, and around 7,000 patients, that is around 30% patients, severe atherosclerotic disease, atheromatous disease in aorta was found in our patients. So that is a significant number, particularly with regard to like atherosclerosis, and it is very important to detect. And if we detect, we can take appropriate precautions to avoid postoperative neurological symptoms. Now, this type of patients, you can see this type of atheroma is quite dangerous, and it may give rise to stroke anytime in the postoperative period. So we should always do TE. These are all of our patients, and one of the old patients, you can see the mobile atheroma. With the 3D, we can also detect the atheroma. You can see a small mobile atheroma is there, along with the whole of the aorta is atherosclerotic. You can see a small atheroma. It may dislodge any time and can cause complication or neurological complication. Another important T model uses while doing the endovascular therapy. We can, particularly in type B aortic dissections, we can guide the stent and graft placement. We can also detect the peri-stent leaks or small re-entry tears. We can also guide wire repositioning. We can also like guide them, and we can have the correct guide wire entrance into the elephant trunk prosthesis, which is the second stage procedure after the Benta. So these are the things we can do. Then coming to the conclusion that echocardiography, particularly T, is an invaluable tool in evaluation of aorta. Its role in acute aortic syndrome is well proved and comparable to other modalities like CT and MRI. T with epi-aortic scanning has become a gold standard for detection of aortic atherosclerosis, particularly in the intraoperative period, and its role in the endovascular therapy is still expanding to guide the placement of the stent and detection of leaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dheeraj. It was a very elaborate presentation of acute aortic syndrome or aortic emergencies, and you have actually elaborately discussed about the role of TE and how important it is in all these acute aortic emergencies. And if we have any questions, please unmute yourself. And Dr. Dheeraj is here to answer our queries.
Yeah, there is one in the chat box. Can you hear me?
Chat box. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Patient is more than 65 years, has aortic stenosis with borderline dilatation of ascending aorta. Do you have to address the ascending aorta is the question.
Like in our setup, there are two things we should look for that. Our surgeons, like in our surgical team, that if there is what is the type of valve is very important. If it is a bicuspid valve, then type and the dilatation is around 4.5 centimeters or more than that, then we address that aorta, because there is the orthopathy is there along with the bicuspid valve. So when the aortic dilatation is more than 4.5 centimeters along with the bicuspid valve, then we have to address. And if the valve is tricuspid and the aorta is around 4.2, 4.4, then we can leave it. There is no problem. Because there are a lot of chances of aortic pathology is there, aortopathy is there along with the bicuspid.
I agree with that reply. And I would like to make a couple of comments. These are not questions. Is there any other question? Let me see the chat box.
Good morning, sir. Good
How
morning,
to make
Prabhu.
out right arch in echo? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How do you make out right aortic arch is the question.
Pardon?
How do you make out right aortic arch?
Like that is done in the, like I have already told you that in the upper esophageal view, we can have the aortic arch view also. We can have the head and neck vessels also. And it can be, we can slightly withdraw the probe, and at 0 degrees we can have that look. And usually in some places we don't have, but basically we can have a, like particularly the arch we can see by the upper esophageal view. That is the only thing.
Sir, this one in. Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
The other thing is, if the right bronchus crosses the aortic arch, then it is called anything. If the right bronchus crosses, then it is called a right aortic arc. Is it so, sir? That we can make out with the ultrasound and also by looking the X-ray.
Yeah, but I haven't seen any case of like, right?
Yes, sir.
aortic
Then,
arch.
sir,
If
my
you-
question is,
If you have any experience in that, you should tell me that. You should inform us that any, you have seen any case of right bronchus crossing the arch.
yeah, then it is considered as usually right aortic arch.
Have you seen any case of
One, 2, 3 cases we have seen, sir.
Okay.
So my question is, intramural hematoma, what you're going to manage? How you, whether to be kept like that or conservative or
Like intramural hematoma is not as it's not an emergency like that of acute aortic dissections, because there's a dissection flap is there and there is ongoing malperfusion is there. But in like intramural hematoma, this is again a part of acute aortic syndrome. It may sometimes that depends on the size of the intramural hematoma as well as the condition of the aorta, and it may rupture sometimes. So particularly it's a semi-emergency type of situation is there. We have to address that thing. We cannot leave intramural hematoma as such. If we are
nowadays this one nowadays the in Stanford A type of dissections will manage with the endovascular stenting.
That is there, but the cost factor is there. In India, there is a cost factor is there. We cannot the cost of that. There is significant difference between the endovascular therapy and the surgical therapy.
How are you going to identify the leaks, sir? Endovascular leaks. There are so many grades are there. That way.
For endovascular therapy?
Yes, sir.
We are I can't answer this because we are routinely not doing all these things, particularly in endovascular therapy. Particularly for surgery, we are doing the echocardiography, and endovascular leak is usually detected by their contrast only. And the endovascular, like vascular people, by putting the contrast, they can. But on echocardiography, theoretically, we can say that we can check the leak, but on practically, we cannot.
Because I have read they given the grades, grade 1 to 4. Yes, sir, sir.
That is all theoretical. I don't think that it is possible, because it is only possible with the dye we can detect the this endovascular leaks.
Are you going to identify the false aortic cannulations? Sometimes it happens in pediatric and all.
It is quite in particularly in which patients?
Pediatrics, sir, we come across in pediatric during going for emergency bypass and all. False aortic cannulations.
Like in that, we should always check the line pressure in those patients. That is also, there is a sudden increase in the line pressure will be there, or sometimes if you are in the false lumen, there is a sudden change in the size of the, change in the color of the aorta, sudden bluish color of the aorta, that also give rise to that we are not in the true lumen.
Okay,
Thank you, sir. We are not like in pediatric, that depends on the age group of the patient. We are not routinely doing the TE in those patients. We are already, like in those patients in pediatric, we are already, we do that epiaortic, or we can do the epicardial imaging those patients. So in those patients, it's like the two, basically the line pressure as well as the color of the aorta. If you are in the not in the true lumen, then there's certain bluish coloration of the aorta may be there. And if you are giving the blood in that, then also it may lead to catastrophe.
Thank you, sir.
Can I make a couple of comments?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Nagraj?
Please, sir. Please, sir. Please.
These are comments only, not questions. Dr. Dhira Raju made a very nice presentation encompassing most of the knowledge available on aortic assessment using transvesical echocardiography. He mentioned that the acute aortic dissection differential diagnosis is acute coronary syndrome, which is very true. That's why what we have done is we have asked the AHA to include echocardiography as a part of the algorithm in the ACS management in ACLS training programs. Actually, this presentation we made it in this month in the AHA annual meeting, which was well received. That is one comment. And the second comment is that the aortic diameter measured in the TE is less than what we see preoperatively by TE, TTE, and other measures. Also because of the fact that after the anesthesia is given, the blood pressure is somewhat on the lower side. So the aortic diameter will be read little low, a little less. So we are documenting this and we'll be presenting it in the next some of the meetings, whichever meeting is suitable. Third comment is that when we are diagnosing aortic dissections based on TEA, we have to be extremely careful that artifacts should not be mistaken for the flaps. So we have to use multiple views and then only come on to a conclusion. And as Prabhu pointed out, there are actually 5 types of endoleaks. First type is because of the inadequate seal from the proximal or distal end of the graft. There is inadequate seal of the aneurysm by the graft. 2 is there's an inflow into the aneurysm from the other vessels, visceral vessels. Type 3 is a result of defect in the graft. Type 4 is endoleak occurs because of the porosity of the graft. Type 5 is called as endotension. These are the 5 types are mentioned. It's if you know it, it's okay, but it's a complication of the graft itself, so you don't have to worry about it. Thank you so much. These are my comments.
Thank you for your comments, sir. So actually, the role of artifacts, I mean, the artifacts and diagnosing a false positive dissection is utmost important, because when there is no dissection and you diagnose it as a dissection and alarm the whole unit is really bad.
That is why CT should be done in all the patients, just to confirm that before taking the patient to the operating, we should do at least CT in all the patients if the patient time permits, just to confirm the exact delineation of the flap in these patients.
Yeah,
agree with you, sir. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Please, sir. So
having said that, the sensitivity and specificity of TE in diagnosing aortic dissection is more than 95%.
94%.
Yeah, it's quite sensitive and specific, but we have to be, because of the reverberation artifacts and other artifacts, we have to be very careful when we spell out that there's a dissection. When you are basing your findings only on TE, you have to use multiple views, and once you have confirmed in all the views, possible views, then only you should declare.
And also with the help of clinical examinations,
right,
pulses and all. Sir, CT, it takes time, sir, because it's an emergency. We cannot shift the patients right now to different floors and get the CT and get the reports. So it takes time. So
in our hospital, usually when the patient comes to emergency room, Like usually CT is just nearby, so we like transfer immediately the patient like to the CT and then ship the patient to the operating room. So
Okay,
it
sir.
comes via the CT like room.
Okay, sir.
And one more comment, sir. It's a comment that usually what we see is the linear reverberations. What we encounter
Correct.
is actually the anterior wall of the left atrium is being confused to be as a intimal flap, and hence we should be very cautious. I mean, it's for the postgraduates. We should be very cautious in actually reporting a dissection, because as soon as they see a flap in the ascending aorta, they always report it as a dissection, thinking that is an intimal flap. And always an M mode would always help in actually differentiating this feature of a linear reverbation.
Sir, wow, what we thought initially was suddenly if there is any changes in the graph of arterial graph, first and foremost is you have to look everything artifactal or anything, then you also suspect the aortic dissection also. Suppose femoral pulses or radial pulses, suddenly if it is changes, you have to keep in mind that also one of the this one. Yes or no, sir?
Yeah, we had one case of like intraoperative aortic dissection while doing the proximal anastomosis. So the aortic injury happens. So the patient was quite hemodynamically unstable after that. So it was detected that like it's got aortic dissection, and so the patient was operated upon immediately, and the Bentall was done in that patient along with the CABG.
I think there's one more question. How far can you visualize the descending aorta?
Dheeraj,
Can
sir.
Yeah.
how
Dr.
far
Dheeraj.
can you visualize the descending thoracic aorta? Can you go to the abdomen and see the?
We can like go till the diaphragm. Usually we can have the like that depends on the like many things, but usually by till diaphragm we can easily visualize the descending aorta. And
So
sometimes
if I can
people have
comment,
also
yeah.
reported that they can we see the iliac vessels and all that the abdominal vessels, celiac artery also, but usually that is not routinely seen. But like till that.
Yeah. May I comment, sir?
Yeah, sure.
So I'll just add on. See, celiac artery and superior mesenteric artery are well visualized in transesophageal echocardiography. But when we go to iliacs and a little bit of renals can be visualized, but below iliacs is definitely not visualized in transesophageal. But we have papers of superior mesenteric artery also been visualized in transesophageal echocardiography.
But exact delineation is not there. Whatever you.
Absolutely, sir. Agreed, sir.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That can also only be done by the CT scan.
By a CT. Agreed, sir.
And also, I guess that you can see the renal arteries to determine the renal resistive index using TE.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
you
sir.
can go below diaphragm as well.
Right. Other than the iliacs, I think most of them can be visualized by transesophageal echocardiography.
Any other comments?
The intramural hematoma actually T goes second to CT, unlike our aortic dissections. But intramural hematoma, since it is not an emergency, a CT would be give a better picture than.
I will add one more. Dissection or dilatation of the aneurysm of the aorta. Sir told only the pulmonary vessel gets compressed. Even the coronaries also gets compressed. They will have ischemic episodes.
That depends on the like dilatation, how much dilatation of the aorta is there.
Yes.
And so many other things are also there along with. If the dilatation is too much, then it may affect the other like things also. And usually for CT and like CT should always be done in aortic pathologies, whether it's aortic dissection or aortic aneurysm or any other thing, if the time permits. That is the only thing. If the hemodynamically instability is there, then we should immediately shift the patient, particularly in aortic dissections. But in all other aortic pathologies, CT is mandatory. We cannot see that, we cannot like only do the transesophageal echo or transthoracic echo and say that we can confirm that like it's a, like we cannot exactly delineate basically the pathology and all the extension of that and all that other things. So CT should always be done in these patients if the time permits.
Hi, sir. This is Dr. Pooja here. Very nice presentation. I'm from Narayana. So I just would like to add on saying that in acute aortic dissections in our institute, we do regular LV apex cannulation so that we do not have any issues with this false lumen cannulation. And TE is very helpful in guiding the LV apex cannula into the aorta. Otherwise, usually it tends to go to the mitral region. So that is one point I would like to add. And also, second thing I would like to ask everyone is how comfortable is the deep transgastric view to view the entire aortic arch, where we have these blind spot issues in the upper esophageal and mid esophageal views. So we find deep transgastric view very comfortable, and if the clarity is good, I think the entire arch is visualized very beautifully in that area. Any comments on that?
Yeah, that is the only thing, that if the visualization is good, we can see that all the vessels of the arch also. But deep transgastric view, definitely I agree with you that it's a very important view for particularly for the aortic pathologies. And second thing I want to add for cannulations, we are routinely doing the axillary cannulation in our patients of aortic dissection. As another way of like doing, we are avoiding the aorta in these patients and avoiding the femorals, and axillary is quite routinely done in our hospital. And that can be used for cerebral perfusion also in the when the patient is on bypass.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, I just read about an article where they say that there's a new method of detection of proximal aortic arch and innominate artery by transesophageal echo. So basically, it was a China-based thing where they've put this Fuji system of Univent number 37 endotracheal balloon, and they have tried to see the arch in the this one on the CPB. So the clarity is much better. That's what they have mentioned. So any comments on that? Because this is the first time I read about it, so I thought I'll just ask it in the forum.
You can also, you can share the thing, like I have no idea about it.
It looks something similar to the A-view developed by
A-view
Netherlands group.
catheter, exactly, sir, exactly.
I
But
think
they
so.
have very nicely modified. They've put some gloves and all. They've cut the cuff. They've put a gloves of a total 8 centimeter, and they filled the balloon with water, and then they have seen. It's quite interesting, actually.
Just put that in the group so that everybody can read it.
Sure, sir.
Please
Sure,
put it.
sure.
That will be great benefit.
Okay, sir.
There's one question about coronary dissection by TE. Is it possible? Can you detect coronary dissection by TE?
Of course, of course.
Yeah,
I think so. It's possible if you
Yeah.
zoom the picture of the aortic short axis. You should be able to identify the dissection.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right?
Yes,
if
sir.
the
Many a
coronaries are
times.
visible, then we can, like if the coronaries are visible, like sometimes coronaries are not visible even on the short axis view. If the coronary visualization is good, then we can detect the detection that dissection flap in that. CT, again the CT is or clinically we can have the ECG changes are there, or like that thing we can also detect.
I would just like to add on, sir. Once we had a patient where we couldn't do the CT, we just rushed her into the OT, and left main and the right both were very nicely seen, especially when we put the X-plane view, and if we have a 3D machine, at least the left main ostia, at least the dissection flap is very much visualized. So based on that also, it's very helpful. And we can see sometimes if the coronaries, especially the root is dilated, the entire coronaries are also dilated. So almost up to the LCX, we can see the flap. So we have seen interesting images like that. And one more point is the origin of the coronaries. Sometimes the coronaries, because of the root dilatation, the coronaries arise at a very high up. high up region. So if we tell the surgeon prior that the coronaries are arising quite high up, even when they're cutting the aorta, they can be very cautious. Otherwise, invariably, they cut the coronary arteries itself. So we play a important role in that, and also in vascular rings especially. And we have seen that when very small kids, that if we insert a TE probe, and if we have a pulse ox or a right radial artery in abnormal right subclavian arteries, that the minute we insert a TE probe, there'll be occlusion of the right artery. So there'll be dampening of the arterial trace, or the pulse ox just vanishes. So TE probe is a relative contraindication, or even you should be very cautious when we're putting in abnormal aortic arch vessels. That's what I would like to tell. And also, I think this LV, I would like to again emphasize that LV apex cannulation, although it looks scary, it's very helpful in acute dissections,
Yeah.
because the false and the true lumen cannulations can be really hazardous sometimes.
Yes.
And obviously, I would like to mention about the monitoring of NIRS, very helpful. If we have a pre-op MRI or a CT angio, which will tell us about the circle of Willis, it will be very helpful. It will help in selective antegrade cerebral perfusion. Otherwise, if we do not have an NIRS and we are looking at arch surgeries, we have had catastrophic incidences where only the right brain is perfused and we have no clue about the left brain, and patients had stroke. So that's
How do
what
you
I
do
would like to.
cerebral perfusion in your patients?
We usually do either the retrograde cerebral perfusion or antegrade selective antegrade perfusion. Especially in aortic arch, we have the pineapple selective antegrade perfusion cannulas. So each cannula is inserted into the 3 arch vessels and separately perfused. So in case we do not have access, or we are anastomosing one of the vessels, we always keep a close watch on the NIRS, and we have seen that in almost 50 to 70% of the patients, we have desaturation of the left brain on the NIRS monitor, because it's not getting perfused. So pre-op MRIs are very helpful, and the neuro people will always help us saying that whether the circle of Willis is intact or not. So I think that part in arch surgeries especially is very helpful.
Yeah, very important points you have made. That's very correct. And we should probably make a particular attempt to ask the cardiac radiologist who does the MRI brain to tell us whether the circle of Willis is competent in a given patient, so that we will be forewarned if the Willis is not competent.
Almost 70% is not present, sir, incomplete circle of Willis. Only 30 to 35 have complete circle of Willis. That's also a very interesting fact, actually.
If you take the general population, it is about 25% have deficiency of circle of Willis.
Yes.
Then what you will do, sir? What you
Then
will
we
do
have to
if it's
cannulate the left common carotid.
separate?
Separately.
Selective,
Yes, selective perfusion of the left common carotid.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. Thank you for the interaction.
If there are no questions, Nagaraj, can you please conclude?
Yeah.
I think there are no further questions.
So it was a very nice
good presentation
for the question.
And active participation from the participants. Very nicely done. Thank you so much, Dheeraj.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you continue to be with us and contribute to the knowledge sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you, Prabhu Shankar sir. Thank you, Kanchi sir. And thank you, Dr. Pooja, for the interaction. And Dr. Dheeraj, it was a wonderful presentation. And thank you for enlightening us about the nook and corners of aorta. And it was a pleasure hearing you. It was a great presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you all the audience. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. See you again tomorrow. Thank you.